Good day, viewers. Welcome to a new edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, with me, Manir Dan Ali. Our guest today is Alhaji Shuaibu Idris, a commentator on the Nigerian economy and business, and someone who runs Timeline Consult Limited. But before that, he's been the treasurer, the group treasurer of the Dangote Group, and the deputy managing director of the Dangote flour mills. Alhaji Shuaibu, I want us to look at the incoming government, which is just a matter of days, and sort of x-ray what are the big economic and business issues that they should be concerned with when they get sworn into government.
Good evening, or rather good day, viewers, and thank you very much for having me. And I think before we commence discussion on the economic matters, it may be wise to congratulate all of us Nigerians for witnessing yet again elections. They've been fought and won, depending on which side of the pendulum one belonged. But at least we should commend the actors and the gladiators. Imagine if, for example, the Labour Party candidate or the PDP candidate calls for a rancorous, action arising from the declaration of Shuaibu as the winner of the election. So we need to give ourselves kudos or a pat on the back to say congratulations Nigerians, and in particular congratulations youths, because quite a number have been quote unquote a bit disappointed in terms of the performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission. But be that as it may, this marks a milestone in the history of Nigeria. We'll be witnessing 25th year anniversary of democratic dispensation, and we need to say congratulations to all of us.
Yes, indeed, it's a point to ponder. But as you very well know, the opposition parties and candidates are also challenging the result of the same election in court, which will not stop the swearing-in process, which will then allow the legal challenge to run its course. And then at the end of it all, we know whether the court will affirm the result of the election or otherwise. But to come back now to the business of the day. If you are somebody who, Shuaibu Bola Tinubu, the incoming president, will listen to, what will you say should be his priority as the man waiting to be sworn in as president?
If I were to sit down with Bola Ahmed Tinubu to advise him on particularly the economic aspect of managing the nation, first and foremost is to advise him to look for competent, trusted and tested hands that will run the affairs of our national economy. I'm sorry, I am not an auditor or I'm not a judge to give verdict, but the last 8 years of the current administration leaves much to be desired in terms of the quality of materials that have been put to manage, the economic affairs of our nation. So the first thing is, what kind of ground troops do you have?
That is the people who will implement whatever agenda you may be on the ground.
You may be having on the ground. What kind of unit leaders, what in the military they call platoon commanders, and the rest of the government of the rank and file in terms of command and control of the way and manner the system should be run. No matter what kind of policy you may want to implement, if you don't have quality materials that will implement those policies will be DOA. They will be dead on arrival. So that is number one. Number two, when you begin to interrogate the Nigerian economy and the challenges of the economy as we face today, then you will be able to come up with suggestions on where and how to tackle those issues. Now, on a quick and easy run, we have a challenge of revenue.
Yes, we are. Well, I mean, our revenue cannot even cover
our expenses.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, what do I need to do in order to do two things? Number one, increase the revenue. Number two, manage my spendings. There's a lot of waste going on, so I need to be sure that I have to come out with decisive policies that will block those loopholes and leakages. And then I need to look at the generation. Do I need to change the taxation policies? Do I need to widen the tax bracket? Do I need to increase the tax rate? Maybe value-added tax needs to be increased. Maybe the company income tax needs to be increased. Maybe the petroleum profit tax needs to be increased.
But
maybe
all this have wider implication because, you know, as you know better than me, in economics, when you touch one thing, it has implication on inflation, on many other things. So you end up fixing one problem and creating another.
My dear brother, in economics, we have a very good adage. We say ceteris paribus. Ceteris will never be paribus, meaning all things being equal. All things will never be equal. And no pains, no gains. We will have to pay certain level of prices for what we have done in the past. I mean, you can't, at your tender age, useless your body, and at the old age, you expect to be still be, you know, looking good and
Up
strong.
and
I mean, it's impossible. So it is mandatory that we have to look at that aspect of the painful, you know, actions that we need to take in terms of taxation.
So this suggests that there will be a lot of hard choices that the new government will have to make if it is serious about changing the fortunes of the Nigerian economy.
There's no two way about this. And I can tell you, whether it is a Peter Obi or a Trake Atiku Abubakar or Wazir Adamawa, or is it a Kwankwaso, Dr. Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, any one of them that would have won this election, there's no any viable alternative than taking these hard, unpalatable decisions, but we have to do, because there are no options.
Right, so you are saying one of them is taxation. There should be higher level of taxes.
No,
probably bring in more people under the tax net.
We need to widen the tax net.
Mm-hmm. What about the efficiency of the collection itself?
Just 1 second. Number one, there are quite a number of people earning income that are not in the tax bracket. So it further buttresses the point you have made, the efficiency of the tax collection. So we need to widen the broadness. So if we are having 10 million people paying tax, including companies, we may need to target to get like 50 million. So even if you don't increase the tax rate, if you are able to get more people under the tax net, you may increase your revenue, and then you will be able to have, you know, a marginal increase in your ability to manage your resources. Matthew, we have already spoken about the need to block wastages and leakages. So,
and probably these are the things that even the incoming president did when he was governor, which is why much of his reputation rests on what he's done in Lagos in terms of tax collection and what have you. But then even that one comes with its own controversies. That is, who will help to get the tax higher and at what price to the country?
You see, Manir, I've lived in Lagos for the last 37 years. And for the 8 years he's been there as governor, Indeed, I was his neighbor, kind of. My house where I used to live was opposite his. And we could see, the level of efficiency brought to bear. I tell you, I have a property in Kaduna where I live. I've never received a ground rent notice.
From that property?
From there, on that property. Where I live in Lagos, I own it. First week, second week, by the third week of January, I get a notice that your ground rent is 12,000 naira or 13,000 naira. If you are able to pay within so day, we have given you 10% discount. I voluntarily go to pay that. Tell me one state that you know that this system is working or is being implemented. Let's not dwell so much on this subject because there are so many aspects of the economy that needs to be tinkered with. In addition to revenue, we need to look at the debt, the content of foreign and local debt that we have so far accumulated.
And much of it under the outgoing government. In fact, there is the controversial ways and means. Even as recent as last week,
billion or trillion.
As recent as last week, the National Assembly had to do one last-minute approval for one of the ways and means, which is literally borrowing from the central bank well above the approved ceiling that the government should have been borrowing.
So the point I'm making is, for Shuaibu or anybody who might be our president to succeed, the issue of the debt has to be interrogated and probably replanned. Today, we are having a nation that is using 96% of its total collectible revenues to service debt. If we are not careful, as of today, Manir, there are about 8 African countries that are already in debt default. 14 are in high risk of defaulting. And one of those 14 is our country.
But it also includes Ghana, which Nigerians used to always point to as example of a better run economy.
No. Even those times when people were giving examples of Ghana, there is electricity supply, regular electricity supply, they never juxtapose how many Ghanaian homes had electricity, how many Nigerian homes are having electricity. So when you want to compare apple, compare it with apple. Don't even compare red apple with green apple. Compare green with green or red with red. But don't compare apple with oranges. So a lot of those comparisons between Nigeria and Ghana and this and that. I used to visit Ghana often. I used to tell my Ghanaian friends, as you are, that you are thinking that you are having regular power supply, so Nigeria was. And as we are, so you are likely going to be. Today, Accra is having power failure. Every now and then there is blackout. So it's no news. Let's not digress the conversation really. Shuaibu Ahmed Tinubu needs to quickly, within the first 3 to 6 months, must take a critical look at these debts and with a view to replanning the debt.
You mean in terms of renegotiating payment terms and all of that, so
and then
that the
instead of 20 years, get it 30 years, get it 50 years. So that will free capital, will free funds for him to be able to implement certain, if you like, palliatives or democracy dividends. So revenue, debt, then exchange rate. As long as we continue this nonsensical approach of having dual exchange rate and promoting economic rent-seeking.
What does that mean?
Rent-seeking meaning, you sit down, if you are lucky, you know someone that is close to government, they give you an allocation of $10 million today. If you are at official rate, you get a premium of 100 naira per dollar. By tomorrow, you are a billionaire because you will get a minimum 1 billion naira as free money. This is the regime that we are just coming out of as far as our financial industry is concerned. Shuaibu Ahmed Tinubu, we expect that within the first 30 days, there has to be a policy pronouncement. arising, centering on this issue of exchange rate. And
very interesting point
just one
there,
second,
right?
please. 1 second. Honestly, the very important thing that also needs to be done is there has to be a signal that this government means business. What do I mean?
So when you may need to explain that when we come back from a short break. Viewers, it is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Alhaji Shuaibu Idris, the Chief Executive Officer of Timeline Consult, a well-known commentator on economic and business affairs. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Alhaji Shuaibu Idris, a commentator on economic and business matters. Before we went on break, you are saying that from the beginning, the incoming government of Bola Tinubu will have to show that it means business. What do you mean by that? Are you saying it should be tilted towards business concerns, or what exactly?
No, sir. There are quite a number of impunities and impunity actions that have taken place in the last 3 to 5 years or even longer. We want to see a situation where those who committed those impunities are brought to book. Unless otherwise you will show that kind of examples, chances are in future other people may do those impunities. Now,
but the danger of that approach is that sometimes you just are too backward looking and you could even trip because you are not looking ahead. And maybe some say, why don't you draw a line and carry on?
My dear brother, history is a good compass for a future journey. And as long as you don't look at history, you may not have the right compass for your future. And I bet you don't need to, you are just combing. You're not going to say, I want to look at the government of Obasanjo, the government of Yar'Adua, the government of Goodluck Jonathan before I come to look at. No, in the last 3 to 5 years, there are some level of impunities that have taken place. You need to pick like 5 out of 200 people. Take 10% of it, 20. Give example so that the whole purpose of punishment is not hatred. It's just to serve as deterrent.
But some people say that the outgoing government spends so much time blaming the Jonathan government, and that seems to be a weakness because instead of concentrating on the job at hand, it was busy trying to blame everything on PDP, Jonathan,
you see,
and the past.
And understand the difference between blame game and punishment. Blame game, they have blamed so many people and then they have caught a number of them, they took them to EFCC, subsequently quite a number of them got even their monies back. Quite a number of people went to court and are getting their asset back. So what are we talking about? So not the blame game now, we're talking of seriousness as in real seriousness. This person has crossed the red line, and therefore it is not time for a yellow card, it is time for a red card, and that red card has to be given. And we need to do that.
But are you forgetting that Tinubu is a politician and this will just be his first term, and probably he wouldn't want to offend so many people as he may be considering a second term?
You are also forgetting that if he doesn't perform, he will not get the second time, even if he wants to. And without these actions, the subsidy or petroleum subsidy removal, taxation issue, renegotiation of the debt, this issue of exchange rate, and the discipline that I said, if you don't look at all this, obviously, you won't get the second term. So, yes, you in the process of implementing your policies, you will do what? You will hurt people. I'm sorry, I will give an analogy. A woman will not be able to give birth without having some pains. But they still have the urge to go back after the first, the second, and the third, and they continue. So we will have to bear those pains. He will have to carry that level of pains and the courage to do this, so that the end will be able to justify the means.
And do you reckon that Bola Tinubu will have the courage to do what the outgoing government couldn't do, which is deal with this fuel subsidy racket, as some people call it? In fact, even President Buhari used to refer to it as a racket, but somehow it's ballooned under his watch. How can the new government deal with that, especially in the honeymoon period that it is likely to find itself?
You see, one of the mistakes our dear elder brother and father Muhammadu Buhari made was in the honeymoon days of his administration. He refused to remove the fuel subsidy. It is an incalculable mistake that he has made for his administration and for the nation. And let me tell you, there is no viable alternative to removal of fuel subsidy. And this regime of subsidy cannot be sustained by any government. So Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it is for him to have the courage and the mindset to do the right thing. Just like they say in Nike, just do it. And we have to do it. But
will he be able to stomach the unrest that could follow? The labor people are already raring to go. The economists are saying that it will lead to inflation because a lot of things depend on transportation, which depends on cheaper fuel cost.
So how do you just last
deal
week,
with all of that?
Just last week at Chatham House in London, there was this conversation on this fuel subsidy. And a rainbow of Nigerian stakeholders were there. There was only one opposition to removal of subsidy. And that was the Labour. And what is the Labour talking about? What are the palliatives that we will need to do to workers if you remove the subsidy? But Buhari's government has already secured a grant of $800 million from the World Bank to provide the so-called palliatives. We have to take a second look at our minimum wage to tinker with it, so that by the time you remove the subsidy, by the time you remove the dual exchange rate, the consequential damage or price increases could then be cushioned by the level of the increase you might need to do on salaries and wages.
But why do you have to take another loan, so to say, when earlier you were saying that there's so much of this debt?
If you don't take loan, how do you eat?
Again to give some palliatives, which may be questionable.
If you don't take the loan, what do you do? As at today, 96% of our revenue goes to payment of loans. So we have only 4%. So will 4% sustain us? So we are in a cycle of taking loans, and will be continuously taking loan unless otherwise you implement those policies that I earlier on enunciated. If you don't reduce your spendings, if you don't manage your spendings, you will not be able to have even additional money to run government. And if you don't have money to run government, what do? You have to go and borrow. And there is limit to the amount of money you can borrow. As at today, we are facing a problem where we go for international capital markets to borrow money, and we are being turned away.
You mean the bond issues that used to be quite regular?
Quite regular and quite, most of Nigerian bonds used to be oversubscribed by 100%, 200%. Today, we issue bonds, we issue the papers, they are 60, 75% subscription. So we are gradually becoming a pariah nation as far as the international capital market is concerned. And to worsen the situation, if we were able to borrow in the past at 5% interest rate because lenders are comfortable with us, today we are having to borrow at 9 or 2-digit, 11, 12%, because lenders are no longer comfortable with us.
What about the MLFLA formula of endless ways and means, that is printing more money and giving to government? Is that not something?
No, there has been a law that has forbidden, that ways and means. Ways and means was created during the military regime. It was an aberration that came during the military regime. When Obasanjo came to power as civilian head of state, we nilled that account, and there was a National Assembly, act that says this must stop. And throughout the period of late Yar'Adua, may Allah bless his soul, there was no ways and means. Most part of Goodluck Jonathan's time, there was no ways and means. So even when it normally small amount, 2 billion, 10 billion, 300 billion, and within a short period, by the following year, it's closed. But today we're talking of almost 23 trillion.
But why did the same National Assembly that you say has outlawed it is approving it for the government, and as recent as last week?
Well, Manir, if you follow the discussion, the president about 6 months ago did send a bill to the National Assembly to sanction that. Was it sanctioned? No, it wasn't. And why wasn't it sanctioned? Because of the same reason and the same factors that I've given to you, that this is an aberration, this is an abnormality. But right now, the government is about to go, and they need to clean up, they need to put this and that, and maybe Mr. President and his team was able to find a way to get this thing done. But I can tell you, we cannot, we must not, and we must never allow this to continue as if it is business as usual. So otherwise, Manir, check the history book. Remember what happened in Mexico, Argentina, the Latin American countries, where you enter a restaurant in the morning, the price of a plate of food in the morning change by the time you go in the afternoon, and by the evening is, and then where people are carrying monies in sacks and wheelbarrows. That is where we are heading to if we continue with this kind of regime. But I want us to go back to these economic policies. There's something very important that
we have just a few seconds to round up, so probably we may have to have another session.
It's important.
But if you could do it in just 30 seconds, that will be appropriate.
There is need to walk the talk of economic diversification. We need to look at what do we need, how do we attract people to set up factories, to process agricultural commodities, add value, and export. We need to attract investment in the oil sector, and we need to ramp up investment so that our oil production, the crude oil that we used to produce 2.2 million barrels per day, which came down to below 1 million, we need to up the ante to go back to where we are. These are the two sides that we need to look at. And we also need to look at the demand side of foreign exchange. We need to improve our healthcare system. We need to improve our educational system so that people need not to go abroad to be able to get some of these. Those are very
important points you have made, but I'm afraid we've exhausted the time for this edition of 30 Minutes. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and I do pray that President Asuwaju listen to this and take some of the advice and use it for our betterment.
Thank you very much. Viewers, that is the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.